Hi, Sebastian Rodriguez, CPO for Privado ID. I see some familiar faces, so I think many people have been following in this room for some time the evolution of ID3, Polygon ID, and now Privado ID, right? So still, I like to start with the why, or what are we trying to achieve, or where are we going, right? So you can understand the roadmap in context. So this is what we're trying to do, right? This is, I think, the slide that summarizes the reality that we're trying to change in identity. But now, not from an, I would say, ideological point of view, but for once, from a business point of view, okay? Ideological, I think everybody is familiar with the decentralization of identities, the self-sovereign identity ideas and goals, and this is where we're going, right? Our commitment is still there, no changes. But now we are adding a business dimension to it, right? And from a business dimension to it, right, because this is about explaining what is the opportunity behind all that, we're trying to change from peer-to-peer relationship between credential providers, trusted data providers, to the applications that are consuming that data, right? And in the same way that we want to put the user in the middle of that relationship, so users have to consent before they share information, we want also to put ourselves in the middle of that relationship. And it fits, right? If the flows goes through the user, they go through a wallet, they go through our technology, right? We somehow are in the middle of this. And we have the opportunity to move from a dynamic of B2B, right? Where companies are buying data from other companies without the consent of the user, but also the consent of the user is, not having the consent of the user is a bad thing, but the fact that they need to connect on a one-to-one basis and have to have one-to-one relationships is also very inefficient. Even if you don't question the ethics of it, it's very inefficient, right? You have data silos, is of course not user-centric, and then usually the winners takes all. Whether you go to an open ecosystem, kind of a marketplace dynamic, and you achieve interoperability and reusability of this data, right? If you're an application, you only need to connect to one point. There is only a set of rules. There is only one way to understanding things, and you get a full ecosystem of data, right? So that is the why, right? I will reiterate on that later, adding the context from the roadmap and everything. So, release 7, right? Release 7 is, we didn't want to reset the release counter because Polygon ID was part of our story, right? And we have been working for many years. So, release 7 is about removing the blockers. And it's a very special release because this time we just didn't add new features. It's not only an incremental release. We have changed many aspects in the flow, in the conception, in the logic of the product, right? So it's really a milestone. And it's all about removing the blockers. There were a lot of blockers that were preventing applications to adopt Polygon ID. First of all, it was for users. A lot of it was about user experience, right? We take for granted that in the Web3 space, people will go and jump 3 loops and do 40,000 things because they are used to it, right? But applications don't want to lose users to these verification processes. So the user experience has been changed a lot. And then also the other thing is the economical model. We are inviting issuers to the party to bring credentials to the ecosystem, and there has to be an incentive for them to offer these credentials. So imagine that you are an application and you want to ask for a credential to a user, right? If you want to put all this logic that I described before in a single query, that query is not simple anymore. If you're an application, for example, checking for age, doing age verification, right? You are an adult, content provider, gambling, or in Singapore, they are asking for age verification in the apps marketplaces, Google Store, Apple Store, right? So they're going to implement that very soon. So age verification is going to become a big thing all around the internet. That query can be very simple if you are in a peer-to-peer relationship with a age verification provider. You just give me the credential or pass the test, right? But if you are in an open ecosystem, the query is no longer that quick. The query will look something like this, right? Prove me that you're older than 18. Well, we know that we can do that with zero knowledge and credentials. I will accept any credentials that follows the H schema. There needs to be an H schema. So all the industry of issuers need to get together and say, okay, this is going to be the single schema, the single format of the credential that we agree on to share, right? So there is an interoperability effort in the industry. I will accept any credentials in the trust registry that are compliant in this or in the EU or whatever, which means somebody needs to categorize these issuers, whether they can be trusted or not, where they can be trusted, for which credentials they can be trusted, etc. So the verifier doesn't need to keep track of that. If you don't have such credential, right? If you're the user and you don't have a rich credential because you never went through that process, right? And you are not reutilizing a previous credential, this is my preferred issuer. This is who I want to work with. Because there is a marketplace of issuers. There are 10, 20 issuers, and for this credential, I want to work with this one, in case you don't have already a credential from the ecosystem. And if you happen to obtain your credential for the first time, by the way, it's not free. So here is the payment. I'm sponsoring you as the application to go and get your credential. So it's not a simple query, and all these things need to be encapsulated in that query to be able to access the marketplace. So this not so simple query goes for a simple wallet. So movie time. I'll try to explain it, but it's quite fast, right? So you can see now, this is the Verax campaign. That verify button contains all the logic that I just described. So when you click verify, you're sending all that information to our wallet, that you don't need to install anything or download anything. You just need to sign a message with your MetaMask. And even if you didn't have an identity wallet, now you have one, just with your signature. And you are redirected to the issuer that the verifier selected, in this case, Synapse. All the interaction happens inside the wallet, and Synapse has a clear protocol that tells how to offer that credential, so the experience is contained inside the wallet. Other issuers can come here too, right? And be a real marketplace. This is the payment. In this case, the user is paying, right? The payment is also managed inside the wallet and by the wallet, right? And the fees are distributed accordingly. And then we generate the zero knowledge proof. This proof is presented to a smart contract, right? Not even to the app. The zero knowledge proof is set to the smart contract, right? So everything happened with the same experience. There is a lot of things that you didn't see here. Sorry, but I think I need to move manually, yeah. So there's things that you haven't seen in the experience. First thing is zero installs, right? We can now use any key-based authenticators to derive all the keys that we need to create your DID, the keys that we use to encrypt the storage, because all the credentials are stored with the user keys, and they are encrypted on the browser. So Privado ID never has access to the user data or credentials. We cannot read them, right? And all depends on the keys that are in your custody, right? In this case, what MetaMask. Next thing could be passkeys, which is also a key-based authenticator that is managed by you, right? And in the future, we may add keyless-based authenticators. The other thing is the embedded marketplace and the credential offering protocol, right? In this case, it was Synapse, the provider. We have other issuers. We have a marketplace of issuers. So as a verifier, you get to choose who you work with. That doesn't mean that you can only use credentials from that provider, right? If they work under the same schema, you can accept credentials from multiple providers and reuse credentials, making the experience much faster. So all this scanning your face, et cetera, is skipped the second time, right? This is the first time process. The second time process that you need to prove your age is going to be 2 clicks, right? There is no scanning face, there is no accepting anything, right? It's much, much faster. The third thing is the payment rails, right? You saw that, but in most cases, the user will not see that because the payment will be sponsored by the application, and everything will be happening on an on-chain escrow service. And the last one is the on-chain verification, which is something that we have for some time already, right? But it's also worth noticing that it was a smart contract who finally verified the proof of the credential, not the application that started the flow, right? So all of this is happening in the background and implementing the idea of that marketplace that you saw in the beginning. So, again, same slide. Now, adding what is the value here, right? Or what is the real change that this introduces, right? Because there are a lot of things you are familiar with: identity wallet, zero knowledge proofs. All these things are known elements. But the innovation here is in combining all these things, right? To turn these one-to-one relationships with each provider has a different language, different APIs, different ways of integration, right? They have different schemas. They have different payment methods and models, right? Turning that into a marketplace with unified experience, unified interoperability, unified payments, right? It's integrate once, connect to an entire ecosystem of verifiable data. So, this is summary. I don't want to get into the details because it's probably too long, right? But these are all the things that we are shipping in release 7. So everything that I have said is just the first column, right? We also shipped the private proof of uniqueness or context-based proof of uniqueness. We made the protocol way more flexible by adding more operators to the secret query language. We are making it much easier to support custom networks to be more friendly with other networks, right? As Sandeep said, we are becoming more neutral, right? So the release 7 is really packed. If you are interested, I invite you to check the release notes, right? We have worked very hard on that one. And now, the roadmap. So all that was just the last 3 months of work, just, right? We have, yeah, I see some people from my team doing like, yeah, right? So I agree with Alex 100%. We have been, I feel, kind of in the shadows for so many time, right? I think we were over-delivering and underselling for a long time, right? But you can check our release notes, and we pack a lot, and this team really delivers and ships a lot, and I'm very proud of that. So, roadmap. And yeah, you read right. It was 100 million credentials, and yes, I don't think that we can get that in Web3, right? So our ambitions are, first, we want to conquer Web3. We have all the tools to solve the top use cases of Web3. But our ambitions go farther than that. So now, so there is no dates here. I don't think it makes sense to put dates here. It's now later, much later. So right now, our focus is to iterate on this web wallet to make it easier and easier and easier, right? To make the experience so good that is as good or better than just going directly to the issuer, right? So for an application, it should be a better experience for their users to integrate us than to integrate the issuer directly, right? When we reach that point, there's going to be an opportunity for us. Payment rails, that is the core of our business model. So if you were wondering, how are these people planning to make money? We plan to collect fees from these payments. That is our business model, right? It's a marketplace business model that, I don't need to say, it is probably the best business model in internet. Self-service onboarding for issuers. So right now we are hand-holding our issuers to be embedded in the wallet. We want to make that fully automated and self-service. Trust registries are an important part for the trust ecosystem. Universal check verifier, we already have it actually. And then we want to make this multi-device, multi-account. So we have a web wallet, we have a mobile wallet. We want to connect them in the most seamless way, so the experience, it doesn't matter which device you are using, it doesn't matter also which authenticator you are using or which Ethereum account you're using, it's one identity that covers all that. Next is going to be an identity chain, right? And believe me, this is not the case that hey, you want to have your own chain for no reason. There are very good reasons to have an identity chain. One of them is to have a single identifier across all blockchains, right? And then we have to have multi-chain identities, so one identity for any blockchain. We need to be AOD compliant. That's where our ambitions go farther than Web3, right? We need to be compliant with European standards and other standards because we want to solve for Web2 use cases, for corporate use cases, right? Identity is really big, as David said before, right? There are many, many opportunities. And the keyless authentication, right? We are now using MetaMask, or we can use passkeys, but we need to allow people to authenticate however they want, right? Let's say, imagine we are going for age verification use cases. People want to use Google to authenticate, right? So we need to see how we balance this without compromising any of our principles, right, of decentralization, of self-custody, etc. And later, and this is a long term, we want to become infrastructure, right? We don't have an interest of being the unique word in the market, or of monopolizing the user experience, or having a suite of everything and try to eat the full cake, right? In Web3, I think we will be able to provide a full solution. Outside of Web3, there are really big players, and there's going to be a huge battle for identity wallets, especially in Europe, right? It's going to be carnage, and we have no interest to compete with 200 identity wallets out there. We want to become the infrastructure layer for them, because they're going to need this marketplace idea. They're going to need payment rails. They're going to need credential offering protocols. They're going to need trial registers, right? So all this is what you need when you want to start a new identity project. You need the bootstrap, right? So our infrastructure, once we have this ecosystem, right, will allow any identity project just to plug and play into a huge ecosystem of already onboarded interoperable credentials, right? That is the long term. That is who we want to be. We want to be an infrastructure layer of identity. And of course, we want to decentralize for many reasons. Ethos, but also legal compliance, right? So if our business model is payment rails, we don't want to be under MiCA. We want to be as decentralized as possible. We don't want to be a company that takes the benefits. We want to be a protocol and distribute this across the protocol participants. And I think that is it. If you let me some final words, I think we have debated inside the team for many months. What are we? Are we tools? Are we a wallet? Are we an ecosystem? What exactly defines us? And I think we are all these things because all these things are necessary for our mission. But our mission is to become an open ecosystem of interoperable, verifiable data. Right? So the ecosystem is us, right? And all the tools that we are building here is just to make that ecosystem happen. Thank you.